In the midst of planning this particular sermon series, I had a clear vision for where each of the sermons I would preach would likely go, leaving room, of course, for adjustments along the way. That is all except for this particular topic. I find myself wondering then and for the weeks that have led up to today what I might say about what it means to be the church, to reject racism. On the one hand, it seems so very simple, this call to reject racism. And that is likely where the problem starts. Such a subject is far from simple. I stand before you, a white preacher who, as we know, is accustomed to standing in front of a congregation on a Sunday morning and, to put it bluntly, wagging my finger at the congregation and telling them what to do. Heck, I'm also the father of a 5-year-old child, so I get plenty of practice of this in my home life as well. Truth be told, the congregation can tend to be more receptive than the 5-year-old child. And yet, with all of this finger-wagging experience, I was still left wondering how I might approach this particular subject. And perhaps that is because this call of our faith, while simply stated, is far more complex when it comes down to both understanding what we mean and following the call. Racism, after all, given in its insidious nature, is far more complicated and nuanced than many of us would like to believe. In the past, when I found myself unsure about how to proceed, I have found it useful to take a step back, perhaps to get a bit of perspective. Author Simon Sinek was featured in a wonderful TED Talk that offers just this much-needed perspective. It's entitled, "The Power of Why." I've mentioned it before here. In it, he describes how much more impact organizations, and dare I say, individuals, impactful they are, when they have a clear sense of why they exist and why they do what they do. We are too often tempted to focus solely on what we do, rather than considering why. Perhaps we're in a hurry or just want to get to it. Perhaps we're not willing to do the deeper thinking. Regardless, when doing so, we neglect to take the time to recognize our motivation. Sinek reminds us that the actions we take are more deeply rooted and leave a greater mark on our lives when we are clear about why. In preaching, we can absolutely get caught up with the what. Go and feed those who are hungry. Go and pray more. Go and invite your friends to church. Stuff like that. But simply focusing on what we are called to do rather than gaining the necessary perspective of why can leave us unmotivated and ineffective. So it is right that we step back and consider why. So this is what I would like to explore a bit as it relates to our call to reject racism. For this is where I believe our theological lens informs us, which seems like a good place to start for a church. And this morning, as it so often is, that theological lens is squarely focused on the ideal of love, and specifically, the call of our faith to love. Now, you might be thinking that's just another what. What do? We love. But the passage we heard this morning, while encouraging us to love, also offers us our why. We love because God first loved us. And that, my friends, is the why that undergirds our entire faith. For God's love is the greatest gift that we receive, and it is the primary motivator for all of our whats. For all that we do in the name of our faith and in our relationship with God and with God's people and with God's world begins with the love we receive from God. Last week, Matthew spoke of forgiveness. And at the crux of his message was this idea: we forgive because we have been forgiven. I believe there's a well-known prayer that suggests just that. In fact, each value we are lifting up in this sermon series finds grounding in the pattern found in this sense of why. Why do we fight for the powerless? Because God fights for us when we feel powerless. Why do we care for those who are poor? Because God cares for us when we are in need. So today, underlying our theme, we ask, why do we engage the world and all God's people out of love, not hate? Because God first loved us. Further, why do we reject racism? Because, my friends, racism in all its forms and expressions is a form of hatred. And as our passage tells us, those who say, "I love God," and hate their brothers and sisters are liars. For those who do not love a brother or sister whom they have seen cannot love God. Racism, as a form of hatred, is antithetical to love. The two do not and cannot coexist. And my friends, we cannot act as though we have not seen our sisters and brothers who have been victims of racism. We cannot act as though the violence and injustice that pervades our culture and plagues our society, that is grounded in the hateful language and values of racism, is not real or does not happen in our nation. We heard the words of Maya Angelou, who writes in Cagebird of her own experiences as a woman of color. And we come to realize the pain and struggle that is far too real for people of color in our nation. And I quote, "But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied. So he opens his throat to sing." And we cannot pretend that the bubble that surrounds us prevents racism from touching our community. We might recall the incident that occurred just a few years back when the home of the Clinton family here in Manhattan Beach was firebombed in an act of racial violence and intimidation. We are not blind to it, my friends. We may not condone it, but what have we done to reject it? And this is where my initial difficulty is grounded this morning. For as a white person in our place and time, I cannot preach a sermon calling for the rejection of racism without first recognizing and acknowledging and repenting for my own complicity. For I have benefited because of the color of my skin. And I know that others have faced obstacles, discrimination, even violence because of the color of theirs. There have been times when I have not spoken up or spoken out, when I have witnessed racist acts or racist language, because it was easier for me or beneficial to me in the moment. And I must do better. I must demonstrate my love for all God's people, especially if I am going to stand here wagging my finger and encouraging you to do the same. For my friends, what does it mean to love God's people? In the past and from this pulpit, I have asserted that to love another is to want what is best for them. And while I do still believe that this is true in some ways, I also recognize that it is simultaneously potentially quite patronizing. For such a definition suggests that I know what is best for others, and it can serve to place my worldview upon them. Far too often, we attempt to tell others what they need, yet if we are sincere in our love, we must come from it from a different perspective, from one focused on listening rather than telling. In the realm of racism, this means that I do not get to tell a person of color what racism looks like. Now, I know that sounds obvious to our enlightened ears, but that is exactly what we are doing when we cast doubt on a claim of racism, focusing on a lack of intent. We might even say, he did not mean to do it, or she did not mean it that way, or they may have had the best of intentions. While it is true that intentions matter, results matter more. For we know well in our world that hatred will find a way, and even the best intentions can result in devastating results. So we must be prepared to own the results of our words or our actions and our inactions. And we must do so with open ears and hearts to receive the words of those who have been harmed. And then we must strive to do better. Racism, I believe, is such a topic, a difficult topic for us, because we do not intend for what we say or do to be racist. And I believe we fear such accusations. But this fear should not cause us to build up walls or result in greater callousness. Instead, it should cause us to open ourselves to receive such feedback as an act of love, for it will help us more fully embrace God's call to love. If despite my best intentions, my words or actions have fed into a cycle of racism, I can only prevent it from happening again in the future if I am made aware of it and if I am willing to change. I don't know about you, but I'm not perfect. And I can use all the help I can get so that I might be the best person I can be, so that I might be the person God intends for me to be. Which brings me back to my understanding of what it means to love others. Setting aside the patronizing attempt to decide for others what is best for them, I have come to believe loving others means wanting all God's people, since that is whom I am called to love, to have the opportunity to live out the fullness of their lives in the light of God's love. Let me say that again. Loving others means wanting all of God's people to have the opportunity to live out the fullness of their lives in the light of God's love, free from the pain and the harm that can serve to obscure that love. And my friends, racism serves to obscure love. And therein lies our sense of why. For God first loved us, so that we might love others without fear and without condition. We feel that love in our hearts, and it motivates us to create a world where God's children, all God's children, know that same love in their hearts and in their lives. So to be the church means that we reject racism. Why? Because God first loved us, and we are called to engage the world in love, not hate. We are called to build a world on a foundation of and permeated by God's love. It's a bold endeavor, to be sure, but one worth pursuing with our whole hearts and with all of our strength.